Today we take a look at build update number 1 on the Atomik V2MR, my ultra low budget build for a 2-wheel drive 1/10 scale buggy. It's Rich here from the RCNetwork.com, and as promised, I wanted to do a budget build, and in this build update we're going to be taking a look at how the kit assembled from Atomik. Now this is their V2MR, their 1/10 scale 2-wheel drive racing buggy. Now there's two different options for this buggy. They have the standard one for about 60 bucks and the upgraded version, which has some carbon fiber, some extra little bells and whistles in it. That one goes for about 75 to 80 bucks. Yes, for the whole kit, everything you see in front of you is what you get for those prices, which is just amazing to say the least. Required tools to build the V2MR are a standard set of metric hex wrenches, including a 1.5, 2.0, and 2.5. You will need a 5.5 and 7.0 nut driver, and a good set of needle nose pliers always helps out. Making the build go even easier are a set of shock shaft pliers, a good turnbuckle wrench, a good body reamer, a hobby knife, and some shears to cut the body and wing out. Fluids needed for the build are diff grease, black grease, some shock oil. I chose 25 weight to start out with, some thread lock adhesive, and I always like to use some Protec RC Premier Blue O-ring grease for the shocks. The manual included with the V2MR is pretty well written. Now, of course, there are some quirks to this build, and I've kind of notated them throughout the build just with the highlighted yellow right there. A whole list of items that you'll need to assemble, and we've kind of already covered that. I do like all of the one-to-one dimensions throughout the manual listed right off to the left-hand side, and it did give pretty specific directions on where to apply grease and thread lock throughout the manual. A couple of the quirks that I found was this small little writing right here. This is turn upside down. Now, if you don't turn it upside down, you'll be assembling the rear differential just completely wrong. So definitely pay attention to that. I also found this other thing over here on this side when you're attaching the actual spur gear to the top shaft. It says right here, attach spur gear so that it rotates without wobbling. There's no science to it. I flipped it several times until I could get it perfect, and I finally did. It took about 3 flips to get it done, but it no longer wobbles. Now, the V2MR kit actually comes with all the parts to make it either a rear or a mid-motor car. Now, with that, you do have dueling instructions. I like to go ahead and highlight the mid-motor instruction on every page prior to starting the build, just so when I get tired or kind of get lazy during late at night, I don't mistakenly do a rear motor setup for a mid-motor car. So I go ahead and I highlight each section to make sure that I'm following the right instructions. The last quirk in the manual that I found was installing the rear drive shafts. You actually install the inner bearing of the hub carrier in this step. This is step 18 in the manual. And you don't actually install the crush washer or the outer bearing until all the way back here on step 34, which is kind of odd. And it is a little bit hard to install the outer bearing and everything, kind of pressing it in with your nails, trying to really crush it in there. So just a thing that I found was a little quirk. I've never seen that in a manual before, especially on a hub carrier. Being that this was the upgraded version, I did get full schematics here of the carbon shock towers. So they do have a little bit different fitment and different hardware that comes with it, which is nice, and it is stainless hardware. Now back to the kit. This kit does have a couple of quirks, and I definitely found them during the installation of all of the parts. Now, the parts quality and the parts fitment was pretty darn good, especially considering this was an $80 kit. You can't beat the pricing for what you get. You're getting carbon shock towers, a carbon fiber battery brace, lots of little bits of aluminum throughout the build, including the front hinge pin holders back here. The whole rear section of the car is aluminum on the bottom section. Super nice parts, and I've got to say they've done their homework as far as the durability portions of this build. taking a look at the kit up close, you can really start to see some of the quality items. I mean, you have the full aluminum bottom piece to the rear of the chassis right here. You have aluminum braces that go around the motor, which are pretty nice. Aluminum motor mount, and the list just goes on. The turnbuckles are steel. I don't believe they're any kind of aluminum or titanium. The drive shafts are actually a very nice design. They are a CVD design out on the out drives and just a dog bone design going up to the ball diff. Now, I did build this as a mid-motor car. It just happens to work out better on the track I plan to run at. As far as the carbon shock towers, they seem to be pretty quality items. The rear has two pieces here that actually sandwich together to take up for the size of the plastic stock shock towers. Right there, you're looking at the front. All the stainless steel hardware was a nice touch. You do have aluminum bodied shocks, plastic caps, aluminum caps at the bottom right here, and then plastic perches at the very bottom. All of the turnbuckles and rod ends have a through design, so you can extract them without popping them to release any of the items. All right, so what did I hate about this kit? Well, there's a couple of items that just stick out like a sore thumb. The first being the wheels. Now, this kit does include wheels, which is definitely a bonus. The rear uses a pin drive. There's no hexes on the rear whatsoever, and that's about 5 years out of date. The front ones use a bearing design, so there's basically just a round hole. You do have bearings on either side of it, but once again, no standard 12mm hex. Although the rod ends were quite nice and they fit pretty decently, I found several of them that I had to massage to get them to fit and have no sort of binding. So I had about 3/4 of them that were solid, and the other couple kind of gave me a hiccup to get them to just drop the suspension without any play at all. The last thing are the shocks. They're just a little strange. Now, of course, they have the aluminum bodies, the plastic caps. You do have to cut holes into the bleeder tube to get them to actual bleed correctly, and they use a tapered spring, so they taper from a standard 12mm shock down to a weird 10mm perch down here, so the use of any aftermarket springs are pretty much nothing. Well, guys, that is build update number 1 on my Atomik V2MR budget build for a 2-wheel drive 1/10 scale buggy. Now, if you can get past a few of the quirks like the wheels, a couple of rod end issues, the weird shock springs, and some of the little snafus in the owner's manual, this could be the kit for you. Now, you can consider probably having an entire almost RTR vehicle for under $250 if you really play your cards right and get the right electronics. And stay tuned for what I choose for this. You'll be surprised, and it'll definitely blow your mind as far as how low we can get a pretty decent race buggy as far as the budget. Well, guys, that's it for now. If you have any comments or questions about these items, feel free to post it on down below. And as always, thumbs up and subscribe. That's it for now, guys. Over and out.